Welcome, Lewis.
Thank you very much, Lizanne. It's a privilege and an honor to be speaking with you today.
It's great to have you here. Lewis actually was a part-time student at Gradlinc, and we invited him as a special guest today since he is situated in Germany at the moment as a market research intern, starting full-time employment in April, and he's been working as an intern until now. Lewis, we are here today to tell all the students that are listening in, there's not only is there a career opportunity if you want to go into data analytics or research, you're going to tell us all about what you studied, but also the potential to go overseas is something that many of our students might want to consider. So thank you for making time. Where in Germany are you situated?
Currently situated in Göttingen, which is in the middle of the country. But in a couple of months, I should be in Hamburg, which is my favorite city in the country. Yeah, but still within the same company.
Lovely. Well, let's get going, Lewis. So first of all, what I want to know from you is, we get these industry experts, and some of them have been a student 20 years ago, 10 years ago, but you've been a student recently. So perhaps it's very relatable to many of our students or graduates that are listening in. But can you tell us, what was your journey and your career like to where you are today? Where did it start, and how did you get to be in Göttingen where we are right now?
I think as you mentioned, it started with studies. So I had no plans at all. Like if you asked me when I was in first year if I was going to end up in market research or where I am today, I wouldn't have guessed it on any day. So initially I was studying maths and computer science. That was me in my undergrad, and then switched over to economics, grew a passion into the field. I I thought that I would just finish my undergraduate degree and then stop right there. And then I saw myself doing an honors degree afterwards. And then for my master's, I decided to do a double master's degree between Stellenbosch University and Göttingen University here in Germany, which is how I ended up being here in Germany. And because I'm someone who's very passionate about research, I was always looking for opportunities that can actually allow me to do further research. So ever since I got here, I managed to do research in like multiple different spaces, from like the academic, just doing like a student assistantship within the academic sphere, and also doing research at the German Institute for Global and Area Studies, which was more of like research in African countries. And I think where I grew the passion for market research is actually when we were at Gradlinc, when we were just trying to uh, learn the market and all that. When I was a student assistant there, that's where I grew a passion for that. But I wasn't sure if that's something that I want to do, or if that's a field that I really want to get into for the rest of my life. But then I did my internship, and after my internship, I was convinced that it's something that balances my skills, which are research skills, and at the same time, something that brings in the business side of things, and something that gives you the room to be creative and think of solutions that are not there. So it's something that I've grown to like ever since I've experienced it. And the more I experience it, the more I realize that it's actually bigger than what I thought it is. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
100%. So while you're talking about, this is perhaps not something that you initially planned, take us through a day in what you do. Like, even if it's a week, maybe if it's different every day, but take us through what this job actually entails for you as an intern.
So the whole point, if you're interning in this field, is for you to try learn how everything works. So the whole point of you getting into that internship is you should come out knowing each and every corner or like each and every method or each and every way of study that's done within the field of market research. So it first starts with it depends with it depends on where projects are currently at, but the whole project cycle, it starts from like conception, which means conceptualizing the problem that a client has, and it goes to programming and obviously identifying the target market in terms of like who exactly do we want to get answers from, and then programming a study, ensuring that you actually get the right people, interacting with field partners, so that they can help you in recruitment of the samples that you want, and sending the questionnaires out or like the surveys out. But that's basically strictly in like consumer insights, because in market research you have different divisions. For example, you also have the sensory side of things, where if you are on that side, you get in the lab as well, and you make sure that what's being done in the laboratory is proper and standard and is something that you want in your results. So in terms of like what I've been mainly focusing on, which is consumer insights, it's mostly online studies. It's mostly testing different concepts. It's mostly design acceptance. Like if there's a specific design and we want to test if a market in China or the Netherlands is going to accept that, we recruit a sample in that country through our field partners, conceptualize what we want for the client, and then send it out, get the data. So as soon as you get the data, you start coding in a way, more of like now you get onto the analysis part of the data, you get the results, you write the reports, and then you give it back to the clients. But if you're an intern, you learn along the way. So you go through each and every steps of the projects, being guided by people who've been doing the stuff like your senior researchers, so that you can see how things are basically done. So it's very interesting because they take your hand and at the same time allow you to do the things yourself so that you become confident. So that's basically what you would go through in a week. And it also depends with the amount of studies that you have. At times it's coding. Let's say we have open-ended questions. At times you might use artificial intelligence, but also at times you have to do proper coding where you have to read the data and try see, is there something specific that clients are mentioning that we might not have picked up, that maybe the client might not have picked up as well, like the consumer specifically. So that's basically more of like market research. It's mainly data analysis, being able to conceptualize the problem, and being able to create a survey too that can capture what you're exactly looking for and that can give you as much information as possible so that you can give the clients the best solutions at your disposal.
That sounds quite like a lot of work, Lewis. Tell me, when you say that you have to gather all of this data, do you engage with clients and do you design the surveys? Do you send out the surveys? Or is there like a marketing team that will get the surveys out and then they just give you the raw data? Or how is that type of teamwork in a company when you do this research?
So if you are a researcher, it's your responsibility to obviously communicate with the client and understand the need of the client. And you always have someone who's your senior, who understands the company or like the client way better than you do. So they can help you to break down the specific problem that they want to deal with. And then after that communication, when you now know like what's the scope of the problem, then it's your responsibility to now contact the field partners who can recruit the specific sample. So you should already know that, oh, okay, if we are looking for 50% women, 50% men, we're looking for people aged at this, like the target market that you would expect relative to the specific problem that you're trying to solve. So that's how the teamwork works. So within your team, within the company, you sit down with your team and they break down how the problem is looking, who you have to contact. And luckily, we always have a lot of information at our disposal in terms of like the specific field partners, and the type of study also matters, because some of the studies have to be done in controlled environments, like specific laboratories, so that if we collect data in France and we collect it in Netherlands, the conditions that the consumers were in should be the same, so that the data can also be the same. There's no spoiling of that data. So it's a constant management of that relationship between within your team and with your external field partners. And then once you get the data in field work, they will be responsible for that. As soon as the field work is done, we automatically get the data. As people are already inputting the data, we get it automatically. And then once we are done with the phase for field work, we close it, we download the data, and then we start with the analysis.
I think people underestimate what it is really about, because you hear market research, you see a survey monkey poll somewhere. And I mean, we do a lot of surveys at Gradlinc because we want to stay in touch with what students actually think and what they need. And, generally it's an Excel, you download the Excel, you create a couple of cute little pie charts. But I've seen you on these programs, and something that blew my mind was the fact that you had to use like coding, and it's so much more in depth than people actually understand when you do these analyses for research. But you said that your undergrad was economics. Are there other undergrad programs that people can study and pursue the same kind of career, or is this the only way to do it?
There's so many ways. I mean, one of the most diverse fields in terms of like people coming from different spaces that I've ever experienced is actually in market research. Like we have psychologists, we have sociologists on the team, we have economists, we have mathematicians, statisticians. So it's one of the most diverse fields that you can ever enter. So it's not just restricted to like economics or you did marketing. We also have people who actually did marketing itself. So what you get at the end of the day is a holistic, is like a team that always applies a holistic approach, where you want to understand the psychology of the consumers, the sensory nature, like specifically with what you do. We call it sensory research, where we focus on the five senses of a person. So whatever makes you make a decision is sort of like attached to your senses. So you need psychologists. They can break that down more than me, more than I can do. But like I can also look at it from an economist's perspective in terms of like incentives. So I can now look at like, oh, what incentivizes people to do what they do, and someone can come in with a statistical approach to say, okay, if we need to get a proper solution, we will need this type of sample, which is this big, and which is like just give any statistical requirements. And so now when you have a team that has people from different backgrounds, you tend to actually come out with way better solutions than if you just have a team that's homogeneous. So I do not think that there is any restriction. It just requires you to have a keen interest in research, and on top of that, to be creative and think outside the box, or like to just find solutions in using the data that you have. And if you can play around with data, which is something that I actually like the most, then you can focus on that. And the fact that you always have a team, uh, you always be allowed to gravitate more towards things that actually interest you more.
Thank you, Lewis. It's incredibly interesting. If you mention, psychologist that's also part of the team, but it absolutely makes sense because I think in any research, but you talk about consumer insights, like that's the core of any business. You have to understand what your consumer wants, otherwise there's no business case for you.
Yes.
So what is a career opportunity for you from here on? So you're starting now full time at the company, but in 5 or 10 years time, where can this grow into for someone that is currently or studying towards research or data analysis? What's your plan from here on?
So I'll start as a consumer insights researcher, and from then on, the whole point of being in that position is to learn the whole research cycle in depth, so that you can be able to conduct every single part of it autonomously or like by yourself without any supervision. And as soon as you get done with that, you become a project manager. So that basically means now that you can take on a project from a client from scratch, and you can be able to conceptualize it. You can be able to design the study, to collect the data, to analyze it yourself, to report it, and also to manage other people to do that. And if you are now like a senior researcher, for example, then your responsibility is basically to talk directly with clients, understand their needs, and plan their research cycles in a year to. So that's now more of like your responsibility to look at the overall, like if we have this client Gradlinc, what is it that you want to achieve throughout the year, and where are you going to need some studies, and try plan things and strategize with them. But there's quite a lot that you can do actually, because you are still in the field of data analysis, you're still in the field of marketing. So it's a very dynamic space that you can even gravitate towards data science. And personally, like where I see myself gravitating more to is statistics and data science. So eventually, as soon as I learn everything about the field, everything about like being able to actually run everything by myself, then I'll gravitate more towards data science solutions. It means that I will have the background knowledge of the specific things that I'm trying to solve. Like it will give me a lot of context by first going through the researcher phase, where you learn everything about what's on the ground, so that now when you come up with machine learning models, or if you come up with any sort of model, you know exactly the specific problem that you want to solve. You know exactly how the research cycle goes. You know the pain points, so you're specifically addressing those pain points. But I see myself gravitating more towards statistics and data science, obviously applying some behavioral economics in there.
Sure. There's something about statistics, that gives you a solid foundation in any conversation, because you don't come from a point of, oh, this is what I read. You're like, no, I know the facts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
So,
there's a question here. Let me bring it on the screen here. So if there's any more questions from the audience, please type it there in the chat or in the Q&A section. But the
mm,
question is, how do you think technology and data analytics have impacted the field of market research?
uh, I think they have made a very big impact. Like if you see, for example, with just Chat GPT, I'm not talking about the field of market research, but if you see the changes that Chat GPT has made and quite a lot of sectors, and that's just one example of like an AI-based system. So technology on its own, just addressing technology, I think it has really changed the market. Of course, I'm still to learn a lot about the field, but I'm 100% sure that with technology and data analytics, uh, we've come up with more solutions. And you can see companies are now gravitating more towards uh, finding ways where they can harness the AI tools finding ways where they can harness like a lot of data analytics. Because if I had imagined market research in the past, I would think that, oh, okay, maybe we're just in a store, we're trying to see if people like this or this. But now, because of how prominent and also the improved use of data science and data analytics, you find that people now want robust solutions that just don't apply to a specific subsample, but that can be generalized to the rest of the population. So to get robust results, you really have to use some data analytics skills, some serious and now with technology and with AI, that's when the modeling comes in. You can feed your model a lot of data so that it can also help you in terms of predicting certain trends and how things will transpire. But I think it has made a significant impact, and in the future, I see it even exploding a little bit more and allowing researchers to understand the core of what drive consumers' behavior more and more.
No, I think you're right. We cannot deny that AI will have an impact and continue to have an impact. So we can carry on without it, or be smart and just incorporate it and make your life a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But tell me, there was a question that I was thinking of when you were describing, a day in your life. When you talk about the company that you're working it sounded like the typical companies where you would be able to find opportunities. Is that your typical consulting companies that you take on a project for a client, you do market research, you give feedback? Like, I'm trying to think, do you know of any companies, or which companies in South Africa would be the typical companies where students would go find a job as an intern after they graduate to start, if they perhaps don't go overseas for opportunities like this?
In terms of market research companies, I'm pretty sure there are some in South Africa, but I'm forgetting the names. But I've looked them up in the past. But there's quite a lot of opportunities, even in like consulting firms. You have quite a lot of them in South Africa because uh, what they basically do is, as you've just described, uh, get different problems. It might not just be certain things about the market, about certain markets, but they range from different problems. So I think the biggest skill that's needed is just being a good researcher. And then a good researcher is inquisitive. So if someone wants to get in market research and they can't find exactly a company that's in market research, I can advise them to also start in like other consulting firms, because you still get that same research skills. And especially if you're a student, I think I've had that conversation with you in the past. You have a lot to learn about just being in a working field and working with other people, how to collaborate well with them. And you might have the research skills, but on top of that, you need that professional experience. So I think if someone goes for consulting, but there's definitely some market research companies in South Africa. But if one cannot get an opportunity there, uh, consulting is just as good, because it's still doing some research, still some problem solving, still some techniques that are still used the same, like in the field of market research. And you can always transfer those skills when you get the opportunity in the specific field that you want to get into.
It's funny, you actually already answered the question that I'm bringing up here. But if you want
Yeah.
to add anything in terms of key skills or qualifications, if you want to succeed in market research, is there anything else that you perhaps just want to highlight that you've learned in the last couple of years that really makes a difference to succeed?
I think I've already mentioned like just being passionate about research, being inquisitive, being able to look at a problem and then start thinking it through. Obviously, you do not really do a lot of new things, especially in work. They will be new to you when you're at the beginning. But the moment you stay in the field, you start seeing that, these problems are similar, and you can always refer to one of the projects that you once did or that was once done within your team or within the company. But obviously, being inquisitive is important. And I have to stress, being able to play with data is also very important. Like the data analysis part is very important. And I mean, being an objective researcher, like being willing to listen to what the data is saying, like as you were mentioning about facts earlier, rather than just having your strong opinions that are not backed by anything and sticking to them. So I think that's the recipe. As long whatever field you might be in, uh, as long as you focus on your research skills, it should be sufficient.
Yeah, I think you make a very important point. You said, you need to have passion, and you can have passion in any job, but it's not enough. You need to be able to understand what is the realistic expectations around the job. It's gonna be new in the beginning, but it can become, I think, for some people maybe mundane if you want to do something else, but you keep working with data. So that's actually why we are having this series, so that people understand, this is what I want to do. I thought market research is building pie charts the whole day. Now you mentioned coding. That was something that I really found very interesting. But Lewis, I've got one more question. We've got 3 minutes left before the
Mm-hmm.
session. If you can just tell us quickly, with research, there's always a qualitative and a quantitative aspects. Let me
Yeah,
bring the question here on stage. How do you approach balancing the research methods in your work? Because obviously it's two very different
yeah.
methodologies.
So it's actually a thing, like wherever you go, there's always your people who prefer qualitative and you have people who prefer quantitative. But in market research, you still have the same thing, but what you do is there's a you blend the two groups, like get your qualitative results and then also do your quantitative results. So in as much as you might prefer one, like naturally as an economist and a statistician, I'm more inclined to, I like quantitative research, but I've also learned to appreciate how much qualitative research give you insights. For example, when I was talking about open-ended questions, uh, it's something, or like if you go in the lab and you have participants, like study participants telling you like, this is working like this is working like this. It's something that's difficult to capture during any sort of like quantitative research. But now, if you actually go down and try get that qualitative part, I believe that both of them intertwined together, you'll be able to tell a beautiful story in terms of like your data. You'll be able to say that this is working like this, and it can be generalized to the whole population because of the quantitative robustness. Furthermore, this is more preferred, and this can be seen as clients way. So now you can even give your client further information in the development of whatever project they are developing. So I think both of them are very important, and you can. It's an advantage to just have both. Per se.
I think that was very well answered. Lewis, thank you very much for your time there in the cold of Germany. We really appreciate it. We've reached the end of the session. All the best with your new position. And I think we would love to have you back, in a couple of years to see how you're going and, how this career is developing for you. But thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you very much. Looking forward to chatting to you in the future.
Sure. Thank you.